Hello and welcome back. Take two. I actually started this video an hour too early, so hello. Hi Veronica. Hey, Sam, how you doing, Bougie Media? Welcome to the talk. Today is about self-love and colorism. Sent a request. Wonderful. I'm going live today with Dr. Sarah Webb, who I'll let her introduce herself. Hello.
Yay! It's good to see you.
Good to see you. My God. It's so good to see beautiful sisters on the line. I've got here Veronica and oh God, just wonderful women that I know would really appreciate this discussion. But Dr. Sarah, thank you and your gorgeous daughter for watching No Shade. And the time out today, you're all the way in Chicago, right?
Yeah, well, I'm like 3 hours south of Chicago. I'm in Springfield, Illinois.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Well, I'm in London, England, Central. Yes, and I was really fortunate because my film was shown there in Chicago, this time last year, June 2019. Oh my God.
So, oh, wow. It's the anniversary. Nice. Congrats.
Right. And so there's so much to unpack. I'm just going to allow a couple of more people to join the chat. But basically, what we should do to kick off is just introduce ourselves, because your fans and followers are joining in on the chat and mine are. And we both have different disciplines as doctors, right? And then we can talk about what we've come here to talk about, which really was about the post-traumatic stress of being Black for African Americans and Afro-Europeans. And then we're going to be exploring the science of melanin. So just a really quick discussion, because we've only got the hour. And I know that I can talk a lot, but I really want to hear from you. And I'm sure you want to hear from me. And then we want to take questions as well as people are going, right? And then just to finish off lightly with some tips that people can adopt, especially because your whole movement and your beautiful feed is about colorism, healing, and how we should celebrate our Blackness and in all of its facets. And obviously that's something that really excites me, and that's something that, even though the film has its own life and language, in our feed and in our imagery, is something that I always make sure that I do, is just really engendering positive imagery and information about all shades and all races or all facets of Blackness, right? Because the real kind of understanding about the movie is that no shade is superior. That's actually the line that comes out of the film that my husband in the movie talks about. So right, and so you know that. So by the way, I play Carla in the movie. I don't know if that's clear to you. People are like, I swear I've heard your voice before. Oh, the film. Right, so I'm as well. So let me kick it off, because people are looking in now, and that's fantastic. Welcome everybody. My name's Dr. Clare Anyiam-Osigwe. I am the creator of No Shade. The film is an independent romantic drama. It's set in England in modern day society, and it looks at the beautiful and complex relationship of Black love, Black unity, centered around the central kind of protagonist or antagonist, I say, that is colorism. Colorism for me has been that brown elephant in the room when I was a teenager going to university. And then as a dermatologist and a doctor of science, I would formulate skincare products for my brand, which is Premay, the world's first allergen-friendly beauty company. And women were coming to me asking for me to create bleaching creams. I would refuse to do that. However, I would give them a free facial, and I would ask them to tell me their stories and explain to me, why would you want to bleach your skin? Women, Asian, dark-skinned Black women would say to me, Claire, my partner, has told me that I look better with lighter skin. My grandma has said that the reason why I'm not succeeding in work is because I'm too dark or I'm too red and I want to be more yellow or I want to be more, you know. And that language really startled me because I thought we'd moved past that. But I realized that it was still this covert, undercover discourse of kind of anti-dark, anti-melanin, anti-blackness that kept on plaguing our community, right? So I took it upon myself to close my practice, use my profits from my business to self-finance this film with my brother and my husband. The film has been shown all around the world. It's a multi-award winning film now. It's streaming on a big, you know, distributor like Amazon Prime, but also new Black-owned streaming platforms like Afroland TV and Quelly TV. So if you haven't watched the film, go watch it. If you have, you know, if you haven't, not going to give too many spoilers away, but I'm going to come back to a specific scene in the film that I want to use to address what we're here to discuss today. Over to you, beautiful Dr. Sarah. Tell us, my fans and friends, who you are.
Yes. Well, hello, everyone. So it's exciting to hear that background because I've been following No Shade for a couple of years now. I remember before it was released in the US, I was like, oh, I want to see it, you know, so I was glad I was finally able to watch it. But I am Dr. Sarah Webb. I am an English professor at the University of Illinois here in Springfield. And so my specialty, my focus is really creative writing and literature. And I also experienced colorism growing up, right? So it was something I had always observed and felt, but never really spoke about. And so when I started teaching high school English 10 years ago, it's like been a long time. I heard my students saying things, so kind of like you with your clients and customers, I was hearing my students say very shocking things.
Wow.
They weren't coming to me for bleaching cream, but they would say things like, I'm less proud of myself because I got dark over the summer, or I wish I was light-skinned like my mom, or I don't like this picture of myself because I look too black, right?
Wow.
And the fact that they would say these things to me, myself a dark-skinned woman, you know, it shows that they just took it for granted that that's how the world thinks, that that's how the world feels. Like, who in their right mind would want to be dark-skinned? It's kind of the impression that I got because they were so casual and like making these statements openly. And so that's when I realized that, you know, it was bigger than me. And so I couldn't just be silent about it anymore, even though it was uncomfortable to speak about it, especially early on. I could not sit by while colorism continued to infect my people generation after generation. And like you, I thought maybe it had died away with my generation. So I was really shocked to hear, you know, teenagers still like with a deeply entrenched mentality. And so again, being a writer, I took to blogging. I, you know, launched a writing contest. I have been hosting like an international writing contest for, was it 6 years now? And I recently just wrapped up the previous one, right? We had a book launch yesterday. And so the beauty of that, like you were saying, is the diversity of people who all have something to say about colorism, right? So on the call, on the live yesterday, I had a woman Skyping from Canada. I had someone calling from India. It was noon and where I am, and it was 10 p.m. where she was, right? Had women represented from the Philippines. And so that to me just motivates me, encourages me to continue on this path of addressing the issue and looking for healing, because all walks of life are, you know, wanting to talk about this and wanting to do something about it. So that's my story.
Wow. So you're an English professor?
Yes.
You know, I'm a qualified teacher as well. I've done a lot of stuff in my, for 34 years on this earth. But yeah, I got a teaching degree before I started my beauty company, just in case my beauty company didn't work. But what I found is that there's so much to do in the classroom in terms of encouraging young Black brothers and sisters, you know, to really love themselves. That I'd always get too emotionally involved. And I would, you know, do a lot of extracurriculum stuff for free. So I said to myself, you know what, Claire, you just cannot do this. Maybe you'll have to be an activist outside of education and use your art and your beauty and your creativity to address the right? And so that's what we definitely share in common. So thank you very much for that introduction. So obviously you watched the film, your daughter reached out and said you loved it. and that, you know, anytime we can go live, let's do it. So here we are today. This is our first sort of I'm going to call this self-love Sunday sessions, and basically it could be a monthly thing, it might be an annual thing, but I just think it'd be great for us to touch in with each other and maybe even invite others to the series just to kind of check in with each other, because, you know, for Black people around the world right now, it's heavy times, right? It's especially living in Europe and living in America, where we are the ethnic minority, right? Hopefully we're the ethnic majority, right? But in these small lands, we are the minority, and we have to focus and deal with that and understand what that means. And so in that moment, Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, you know, these kind of companies wanted to jump on bandwagons and preach that they're going to be supportive. Within that, there is still this sort of, and I'm going to be candid today because we're very short on time. It's just the hour. But in my mind, there's this sort of still uncomfortability because a lot of Black people don't actually enjoy other Black people. And that,
you dropping truth bombs.
Babes, I'm not here to play no games, yeah. I'm as fresh as they come. And that's why I don't talk a lot, because I'm like, do you know what? Me, you don't want to hear from me. Trust me. Yeah, I go there. And so I've seen a lot of coonery, a lot of people who I know for a fact do not support other Black businesses and other Black people, but want to put the pressure on, say, white counterparts or white business owners. And for me, we are the source. We teach people how to treat us. If we don't love ourselves, how can we honestly begin to deal with institutional racism and equality on a world stage? And that's why when I made this film, I'll be honest with you, sis, my Black brothers and sisters did not run out to the cinemas to watch this in the UK. Yeah, they let me down.
I believe.
But sis, my African American sisters showed out. Baby!
Love it.
Joking, man. I give you lot. Listen, I've got all the time in the world, and even up until this year, I was thinking about moving to America to be closer to you guys and to do more work. When I saw the foolishness kicking off, my eyes are now directed to Africa. I'm sorry, because I am Igbo and Nigerian, and I do know my direct lineage. I know exactly where my villages are. Most of my 90% of my family live back home, right? And we're welcome. We're not the 1920s version of Africa, flies on the lips and all that rubbish. We are kicking ass back home, right? So they'd be like, Claire, what are you waiting for? Come home, man. Come and do your thing there. But not to leave the Western world without solving the issue. I think to myself that what we could really do through our art and through this conversation is just to give people some science behind it. So I was having a look, and I'm sure that you're probably aware of this, but I'll kick off with this. So basically, there's this a gene. It's called the mitochondrial Eve gene, that scientists have traced back, that every single person on the earth today is related. Their earliest ancestor is an East African woman. It doesn't matter whether you're German, white, Aryan, your ancestral mother, it has been scientifically proven, is an African woman with Black skin, with the deepest shade of melanin, right? And then to quickly move on, with regards to the science of melanin, I've been reading this book and I want to write my own version, because I feel that there's some bits missing. But I'll just read this for our listeners. In humans, melanin is the primary determinant of skin and hair color. However, few people know that melanin is found in almost every organ of the body. Melanin is a natural substance that gives color or pigment to the hair, skin, and the iris of the eye. Cells called melanocytes, located just below the surface of the skin, produce melanin, which is of high levels in people where melanin primary function is to protect the skin for damage from sun damage, right? So what happens, I'll give you the science in layman's terms, is that if Mother Earth, as in the physical form, is a black woman from East Africa, born with dark shade of melanin skin to protect her and her offspring from the sun, she will continue to produce that gene. What happens is, as our highly melanated brothers and sisters have moved out through Pangea, when the world was one and then broke off into different tectonic plates and became Asia and became the Americas and became Europe and England, right? You don't need as much sun. So there's going to be sun protection because there's not that much sunlight here, right? So the mutation through science is that Mother Africa, her genes will mutate so that you become to produce people with less melanated skin because they don't need that much protection. That's why you can see a very dark-skinned woman with another black man and they might produce a very fair-skinned baby. And you think to yourself, how the hell did that happen? Every person has come from the African woman. So your variation of melanin is about the mutation of where your ancestors have moved around throughout the course of history. What happened is transatlantic slavery, because we now know about sub-Saharan slavery in the 7th century. Yes, of course, we were trading each other in North Africa, okay? There were Arab Africans trading East Africans to do labor. But there wasn't all of this barbaric devilishness that the white man from Europe, Christopher Columbus and them, brought over with the shackles. And you wasn't treated like that. Right. You were literally working. It was a job. And people still now have housemaids and clients that work for each other across Africa. Okay?
Right.
The switch came in the 16th century when European England and American people came to the shores, were trading. What our forefathers didn't understand was that when they were going to get to those shores to do the labor, whether it was to get to Brazil, get to England, get to America, right, or the Caribbean, how they were going to slaughter the black man through castration, how they were going to divide and conquer us through colorism, the lighter skinned Negro working in the house, the darker skinned Negro working out on the field, rape as a form of violence. They didn't understand that those things were going to happen to them. Why? Because the African instinct is love. So everything about us that is beautiful, divine, wholesome, and good, in the Western world, in our history books, we're taught that we're barbaric, we needed to be tamed, we should have been treated, you know, to justify the reasons why they've done these things to us. What's happening now, 400 years later, is that we have internalized this through popular culture, through movies, through films, where we're seeing the fair-skinned woman with the pressed hair looking closer to the white ideal of beauty. We're seeing our black brothers wearing their trousers down to their bum, which, if we know, is linked to prison and this idea of homosexuality. A lot of guys think they're looking cool in the hood, but it means something completely different to our white counterparts. We have taken on and adopted some of the, if I be frank, bastardized versions of blackness and tried to kind of flip it as a means of survival. And what has that done? That has caused a lot of post-traumatic stress. So we don't know sometimes why we don't take to each other, but they've done such a beautiful job of dividing us that we don't even want to look back, because when we do, we get into the conversation about, oh, but our ancestors sold us out to the white man. They didn't know. What can we do now to overcome and to heal those wounds so that my daughter, who's just 1 year old, in 20 years' time is not at college, saying, Mom, someone just told me that I'm too dark or I'm too light or I'm this and that. How do we move forward long term? What do you think? So
Thank you for that breakdown. Thank you for that breakdown of the history. And I love when you got to the part and you said we've internalized, I think you said bastardized versions of Blackness and that sort of thing. And it leads us, it's like we forget the history intellectually, we forget that history sometimes, but it's still manifested in our DNA, in our genes, in our, cultural norms and things like that. And I think, like you said, my focus is on colorism healing because post-traumatic stress, and then Joy Degree came up with post-traumatic slave syndrome to talk specifically about, PTSD for African Americans and Black people of the diaspora who were enslaved, right? And so looking at the particulars of slavery, even in terms of our health, right? Like Black people are more susceptible to certain health issues because of the conditions of slavery, right? So it's literally in our, bodily cells to still overcome and deal with the trauma, the emotional, psychological, and physical trauma of slavery. And I think when it comes to healing, I talk about it in kind of two categories. I think about individual healing and collective healing.
Nice.
And so what does it mean to heal individually for me as Sarah, right? Versus how do we as a community, we as, as culture of Black people heal as a group? And I think for us, we have to realize that our healing does not have to be put on hold until the world changes. And I think that's one important thing to think about, especially the individual healing. I had someone say, well, how can I heal if the other person has never apologized, right? And that, that applies to colorism, but to so many other things, right? We might have a perpetrator who has committed an act of violence, or colorism, or racism, or sexism against us, and we can't wait for them to apologize or to see the light or to become enlightened and change their ways before we do our own work. And I think that's relevant for colorism because tomorrow, right, there's still going to be misrepresentation of dark-skinned women. 3 months from now, there are still going to be Black men who say they don't like Black women. 10 years from now, there are still going to be white people who think, straight hair is better, right? And so I have to ask myself, and what all of us have to ask ourselves is, where is my role in terms of healing myself despite the external conditions, right? And so I think about the analogy of home or a house. And so I have been asking myself, what is healing? What does healing mean? And for me, it is that self-love. So I love the fact that you're calling the self-love Sundays. And self-love, for me, I'm learning more and more that I become at home with myself and I become at home within myself, right? And so if I am home, just like in my physical home, there might be trouble knocking at my door, but it's my responsibility to guard my own home, right? And so I think that's an analogy, right, of how the world is going to do what it does. But within my house, right, I lock my door and and you can't come in unless I invite you in. And I'm going to raise the standard of who I invite into my home, whether it's my psychological home or my physical home, right? And so I'm no longer going to accept people who gaslight me, who make me think I'm just being too sensitive. Right? I'm no longer gonna, invite people into my emotional home and my psychological home who say, well, we need to focus on racism. Colorism is a distraction. And if we just think about racism, then that's the real purpose, right? Because like you said at the beginning, we can't address racism if we ourselves are replicating racism. If we are doing the racist work for the larger society, then we are basically trying to fight the enemy with one hand tied behind our back, right? And so I think a lot of some of the core pillars that I've been, developing over time, it does take courage because I think people think healing is supposed to feel good, right? Oh, if I'm healing, that means I'm just going to be feeling great all the time.
I love
but healing.
I love that. That is so true. Because there's a journey within that is painful, man.
Yes.
You're detoxing, you're letting go of some stuff. And that hurts, man. And that is ugly. And not ugly as in the opposite of beautiful, there is beauty in ugliness as well. It's one and the same. And it depends on what you're comparing it to. Like, it's not going to be all neat. This is not the movies. This is actually real life. So you have to do that in whatever way. Like, for some of you guys, you follow me on my own personal page. I'm going through a massive transformation in my life right now where I'm healing. And that involved me removing all of my old images. That was just something I was compelled to do, because I was like, in my eyes, in my selfies and photos, I could see pain. I could see tiredness. Other people saw success, money, travel, love, running around the world, enjoyment. And what I could see, all of the stress I've been carrying for the last decade of chasing my dreams, of going from an adolescent to a woman to a middle-aged woman now who's a mother and a wife, and not dealing with certain childhood traumas. So that, you're absolutely right. It's not always going to be, you know, neat and beautiful. And it doesn't always need to be overt as well. It doesn't have to be a declaration, you know, for likes and clickbait. Just, you can heal in private.
In quiet, yes, in private, absolutely.
Exactly. Someone said it's very, very personal. Sorry.
Absolutely.
I'm just reading.
No,
yeah, go on.
and I think, like, as you were talking about too, like, that takes a high degree of courage, right? And so I think so many of us get stuck and never get through the healing process or make progress in the healing process because we are afraid of the pain. But we're also afraid to maybe experience the guilt that comes with some of the things we need to change, right? So if I, you know, were to look back on my old beliefs, the old ways I thought about myself, the old ways I thought about the world, the old ways I thought about my brothers and sisters, like, guilt might come up with that, right? And so a lot of people would rather just dismiss, rather just deny, than say, you know what, I have been perpetuating the white supremacy. I have been part of the problem of perpetuating racism even amongst my own people. And I think having the courage then allows us to develop that self-awareness, right? So if I'm willing to face myself no matter what I find, if I have the courage to say, okay, well, this is who I think I am, but what are my actions and words actually lining up with, right? Then that self-awareness, right, which we get through self-reflection, is how we can gauge our healing, right? So you can't know, you can't know that you're wounded without self-awareness. And B, you can't gauge your healing journey without that self-awareness, right? So again, if we use the analogy of the physical, I have to be able to sense my skin to know that I have a cut, right? I have to be able to feel my legs to know that there's a bruise there. And it's like, okay, that's self-awareness, right? But then I'm also self-aware to know, oh, that pain, that sharp pain from the paper cut has dissipated. It's not there anymore, right? And so you can, like, engage in practices of reflection where you say, the things that used to trigger me, the things that used to make me cower in silence or dim my light, are no longer seem as threatening, right, or as fearful, right? I'm not as afraid of the negative comments on, you know, social media, or I'm no longer afraid of what some man is going to say about my beauty, right? I'm going to wear my hair the way I want to, or do my makeup the way I want to, or not do my makeup, right? Like, those things that used to cause so much pain, we come to find that they get better and they soothe over time.
That's really, really beautiful. And obviously in your organization, or kind of, would you call it a campaign, Colorism Healing Your Handle?
Yeah. It's definitely more of an initiative, a campaign, a collection of projects.
Okay.
And once again, absolutely.
Okay.
And I think I see some people on there. I saw one comment, but, you know, in terms of people of all shades, remember when we were talking and exchanging like DMs, we talked about what does healing look like for people of every shade, right? And we talk about a lot of times unity, and so people who say we can't talk about colorism because we have to be united, right? And I think not talking about colorism is actually a barrier to unity. I think ignoring the division that's already there is actually going to keep us severed, right? Yeah. And so we need to be able to acknowledge, you know, the history of what we've gone through. Absolutely. And I think being honest with each other, you know, in terms of the collective healing, like that's what it's going to take. Pretending like it's not an issue, pretending like there isn't systemic privileging of lighter skin and more European features, and systemic marginalization of darker skin and more Afrocentric features, pretending like that's not real is not going to get us any closer to unity, and it's not going to get us any closer to collective healing, right? And then again, I'll say this, and then I'll, you know, let you respond back, but the healing for people of every shade is how we stop perpetuating it. Because we all know the saying, hurt people, right? And so slavery hurt all of us. Racism hurt all of us. White supremacy, is colonialism, hurt all of us. And so we are all responsible for healing ourselves so that we don't continue to perpetuate the evil that was done against us.
1000%, 1000%. And that moves me on beautifully to the scene in my film. So guys, if you've watched No Shade, this is a spoiler alert for the people amongst us that haven't seen it, but there's a beautiful scene between Jade, the dark-skinned lead character, and Andrea, the lighter-skinned character, and they're both vying for the attention of Danny, the main and protagonist of the film. They come together, and in the cinemas, women cried. Like, they really loved that scene because in that moment they understood that they were the same. They both Andrea's exact words are, he wants me to be you and he wants you to be me. And that is not just a colorism issue, but that's a women's issue in terms of vying for male attention if you are heterosexual, and this understanding that men set the agenda for what is beautiful and what is gorgeous, and, you know, beauty over brains and all these milestones that we, you know, and things that we try and accomplish vying for male validation, right? And so when we break down those historical structures of patriarchy, I started this conversation talking about the mitochondrial Eve gene. So we're talking about a woman. God gave woman the portal of life. I produce a child. You have, Sarah. So you know what it takes to bring a human being into this world. It is the most magical and scary process of your life. And it's touch and go. It's touch and go. Like, even to the point where they're taking the child out of you, you know, when you're pushing. And sadly, it doesn't work out for a lot of women, especially, sadly, Black women. And that's a whole nother discussion, right? And therefore, men and the understanding of colorism, which is mostly perpetuated against the darker skinned woman, it is about matriarchy, patriarchy, so masculine and feminine. Let me give you a little learning. I told you I'm Igbo Nigerian. You know, in culture, my language, my native language, they don't have a word for queen. You know what a queen is? A queen is a female king. It's so amazing, because what that says is that this is a society where the man and woman are equal. She's not inferior to him. She's just got female queens, but is a king as well. And we have nations and tribes built on a female king and a male king. They rule together. Like the lioness and the lion in the jungle is actually the lioness that catches the prey. The male lion, the lion rules the land, but the lioness is the huntsman, right? So again, this language that has separated us in terms of, oh, you're just a woman, or you're a bitch, or you're a dime piece. You know, this understanding that you're like, you're a possession of the man. When I'm telling you, as an Igbo woman, that me and my husband are equal partners in everything that we do, and he would never look down on me and say, he calls me queen and I do call him king, even though we don't have that in our language. He would never be like, oh, you're weaker than me, or you're this or that. But at the same time, oh, you're the strong Black woman, so you can handle everything that life throws at you.
Right.
There is vulnerability in our Black brothers. There is vulnerability in our Black sisters. And, you know, we need to unpack and heal from colorism together, whether that's through addressing the fact that our lighter skin counterparts are heavily sexualized and fetishized in popular culture. And a lot of that is, they're completely against that. You know, for my friends who I've grown up with, they're like, Claire, when we were growing up and guys used to be like, yo, lighty, and call me out, I never liked that. I always found that so degrading to be addressed and fancied because I was lighter than you or my other friends. What is that?
Yeah, and I think because I like that scene in No Shade as well. And to your friend's points, like I think like our light-skinned sisters have to reject the pedestaling, right? Our light-skinned sisters have to reject the, you know, I guess unwarranted attention or the, you know, misguided attention, right? And say, hey, no, you're not going to address me, you know, as lighty, and you're not going to compare me or pit me against my sisters who are darker or browner than me, right? And so I think that is a good example of being on the same page, right? That's what unity actually looks like, not let's ignore and pretend like there's not a color hierarchy or a system of, you know, evaluating lighter skin over darker skin, but to actually say in those moments where it's like, okay, I see how this employer or this teacher or this guy is treating me in contrast to my darker skinned sister, right?
Yeah.
And so in that moment, how can we be on the same page and say, hey, you're not going to talk to any of us that way, right? You're going to give us all the respect we need, right? Or even in the case of a job, saying, you know, no, my darker skinned sister is just as qualified as I am. Or, you know, the way she wears her hair, yes, her hair might not be straight like mine, but she's still just as professional as me, right? And so that's where the unity comes in at. It's not pretending like colorism is not an issue, right? And the other reason why I loved that scene is because my own sister, just to clarify, so I don't actually have kids. So I was the person who reached out and I was watching it with my mother. So hey mom, if you're watching, yeah, I'm the daughter. But I get what you're saying there. But my sister is several shades lighter than me. And I was fortunate that she was also like your friends, right? She never, you know, took in or internalized when people wanted to put her on a pedestal, she always rejected that. And so she and I had a very good relationship, a very good bond. And I think we need more examples of that. We need more images, more stories of women being able to connect across differences, right? Women being able to genuinely see each other. And you know, and seeing each other and connecting across differences doesn't mean you ignore the differences, right? Saying, yeah, I see how he preferred what he thought I was because I'm light-skinned, and I see how he's rejecting you because you're dark-skinned, right? But he's got us both mixed up, right? He's got us both, you know, twisted, you know? So I thought that was a beautiful moment. And even, you know, not to give too many spoilers, but the way both women, both sisters, you know, at the end were empowered to, you know, defend their own humanity, I think was beautiful.
Wonderful. Thank you so, so much. I'm going to take this opportunity to invite us to seeing people like Veronica and Simone who are really vocal about patriarchy and the understanding of, you know, we've got to tackle that as an issue. Truly Lashed is clapping. Barbara is saying 100. The patriarchy really effed us over. Truly Lash is saying, how will white people grow and be anti-racist if we don't fully collect and unite? Listen, I totally agree. Has anybody got any questions about what's been discussed so far, or any specific topics that you want us to go into more depth on? We've discussed the science of melanin. We've discussed the approach to colorism healing with regards to how we can be more unified in the sense of personally. So not allowing people to come into your personal space, rejecting people that gaslight you, being more kinder to our lighter or darker counterparts and celebrating the best parts of ourselves, but also just tackling colorism, whether you're experiencing it or not, and not using that as an excuse to say, look, we're dealing with racism right now. You know, the Black Lives Matter thing is more important than colorism. It's actually divisive. No, it's not. The two should be tackled as one and the same. I call colorism racism's ugly cousin. It's a byproduct of racism, isn't it? It's a byproduct of white supremacy, colorism. So we have to tackle it together so that we can actually move on, because we won't move on if people keep saying, I don't want to hear it. Thank you for being vulnerable and creating this space. I just thought it was really important because, okay, say for instance on Friday, right? After, I think I reached out to you on Friday. Or maybe no, I reached out to you on Saturday because of Friday. Because I was going to reach out to you. I reached out to you anyway and said that we need to do this. But then someone, and they've actually called their handle light-skinned girls. Fine. I put up a video of the scene of me kind of listening, counseling Jade. So Carla counseling Jade in the movie No Shade film, right? Where she comes to my house, she interrupts my dinner. She's been on the most horrific date with Jerome. He's told her she looks like Babatunde and Barbie and all of these kind of, he really degrades her in that moment, right? And the caption I wrote was, when a dark-skinned friend or your wife or your sister tells you that they are experiencing colorism, be more like Carla. Listen to her, empathize with her, do not gaslight her, and most importantly, just hear her. Like, just listen to it, just hear it, even if you don't even know the right words to comfort a person. Just sometimes people just want to vent. They just want to, it's better out than in, isn't it? Because that's where illness comes from, when we hold and we become depressed. We're holding all these things in. When we express it and release it, that's where wellness is, right?
Yes.
This person on this handle, Light Skin Girls, said, why should she be heard when she gaslights, she degrades people, she's derogatory, she doesn't listen to us when we're going through our things. And I wrote back and said, can you please be specific? Who doesn't listen to who gaslights who? Like, spell it out. And this person hasn't replied. But when I looked at their feed, I just thought to myself, okay, there is an energy there that seems to be about feeling left out of the conversation of colorism, that because by default lighter skin is celebrated, that Black women do not empathize or cannot relate to our lighter skin sisters. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think the example that you just gave with regards to, if they feel comfortable and strong enough in their position to say, when they see a dark-skinned woman being projected in that manner or approached in that manner, they could say, you know, my hair is not the standard for Afro curls, right? There's 3A, there's 3B, C, all the way to 4C, and probably beyond, right? These are just the ones that we thought that you can categorize. We come in so many different shades and colors, hair types and styles, colored hair as well. Like, not everyone from Africa has black hair. Some people have red hair, some people have purple hair, some people have different tones to their hair. So I think lighter skinned women are feeling as though they are not being represented well in the colorism discussion. What would you say to that?
Well, I think I had a very controversial blog post that I did several years ago about how colorism affects light-skinned women. And I think I advocate for healing amongst light-skinned women too, right? And even healing from the quote-unquote positive benefits or privileges of colorism. And I've heard some light-skinned women say that it's a matter of survivor's guilt or guilt, right? That, well, man, you know, I don't want to be treated better or differently or put on a pedestal by certain people in society,
Right.
but I can't stop it from happening, right?
Right.
And so I think even healing from the fact that you have privilege, and that might sound strange, but I think there is part of the reason why it is hard for women of different skin tones to hear each other's stories is because we are still dealing with and in the pain of our own story. And so, for example, the person who left that comment, she doesn't want to listen to a dark-skinned woman talk, right? Because she's still in the pain of her own experiences and stories. And so I think the only way that women of all shades are going to be able to hear women of different shades is to deal with the pain that we have experienced. And I think too, like for me, I always like make sure we distinguish between colorism as a systemic or structural society issue versus the interpersonal interactions that are a result of colorism. And I think that's a nuance that we don't want to overlook in actually healing from the issue and actually addressing the issue, right? And so I think the interpersonal bullying, the one-on-one, this specific person that treated me this way in middle school, or these specific people on my block, you know, used to try to beat me up or call me names, right? I think all of that is a manifestation of the social hierarchy, of the micro scale that says whiteness is the ideal, and all people of color have to try to approach that if they want to survive, right? If they want to have social upward mobility, right?
Yeah.
And so I think when we talk about the interactions with like schoolmates or family members that a lot of light-skinned people experience, the best way to get to the root of that is to address the social hierarchy, right? And so I know, again, like these are always, you know, taboo topics or controversial topics, but to my light-skinned sisters who don't like being ostracized or bullied or taunted or told you're not black enough, right? All of that is a result of the hierarchy that says lighter skin is better, right? And so in our efforts to deal with the attacks that light-skinned women get has to be a larger conversation and a larger addressing of the issue of colorism as the system that really does privilege lighter skin and marginalizes darker skin. And that relates to a question that I see. I don't know if you've seen it, but Simone Brown Film says the key problem is this: those who benefit from the status quo have no incentive to change. Why wouldn't light-skinned women want to be picked by high-value men, aka wealthy men? And I think for some people there is an incentive to change, and that's your moral compass. That's your own moral system, right? And so we think about white people who have no incentive to put up a Black Lives Matter flag, white people who have no incentive to march alongside, you know, African Americans after the death of George Floyd, but they did it because they felt it was the right thing to do. And so, yes, a light-skinned woman might say, well, the system of colorism is kind of putting me in a good place, right? Like if I have less competition for jobs, less competition for dating, then why would I want to change that system? And so we could say, because it's the right thing to do, right? And also acknowledging that,
like Europe or America, and your very thing is to just try and survive another day, you do kind of act like a crab in a barrel, isn't it?
You do, absolutely. And I think too, though, the crumbs that people are being a crabs in a barrel for, right? To support colorism, even when it benefits you, ultimately, for my light-skinned sisters and brothers, is ultimately going to be what is your demise in the end, because colorism is white supremacy, right? So as long as you're supporting the system of colorism, you're supporting the system of white supremacy that also degrades and devalues you. Right? So yeah, in the system of white supremacy, aka colorism, you might have a leg up on a darker skinned sister, but supporting that system means that white women will continue to have the advantage over you. And so it's in your best interest, regardless of how light you are, to dismantle this color hierarchy that puts light or white and long straight hair at the privileged end of the spectrum and marginalizes everything after that, right? So dismantling that hierarchy is in everyone's best interest, because as a light-skinned Black woman, you might be in the middle of the hierarchy, but you're still going to be disadvantaged when it comes to the mainstream or the majority society, especially like you said in countries like the UK and the United States, where white people still dominate, you know?
Right. There's a comment here from Colorist who says, how can I love Black men? I used to be all for Black men, but now I'm 100% into empowerment of Black women of color or women of color. I am so triggered when I see a Black man with a white woman. It feels like rejection. Hey.
That's real. That's real.
That's how
Thank you. Who said that? Thank you for being honest about how you feel, because so many people feel that way, but they pretend like they don't feel that way. And again, we're not going to make progress if we pretend like we're not feeling what we feel. So just starting off, kudos to you for being 100% about, you know, even whether I, at the end of the day, think it's right or wrong to feel that way is not an issue. It's like, it's how I feel.
The purpose of this discussion, this is your space, everybody that's listening right now, for you to get some knowledge, express your truth, and an encouragement to heal. So if that's part of you just getting that off your chest, you may not even have ever said that out aloud in life, but I have felt like that. And I'll tell you the God's honest truth, I have occasionally felt like that, especially when I was dating in my 20s.
Me too.
Handsome man them that I would want to date, and they would be telling me, Claire, you're more like my sis, you know what I mean? And these girls are more big, but you know, if I don't find no one by the time I'm 30, I'm like, what, you bring for me? You're mad. You can't put me at the bottom of your list and then want to come for me. Are you for real?
Like a last resort.
Exactly, because my self-esteem has always been so high, even though the whole world doesn't want me to feel amazing. I always have internalized that I'm a goddess. But for other Black women, that might not always be the case, because they're doing such a beautiful job, collectively, the world, of making us feel like we are at the bottom of the totem pole. So I totally relate to what you're saying. Next comment.
And I do too. So I want to like do the opposite of gaslighting and say like, I have also felt that. I also felt triggered. And I think that's, again, focusing on the healing is not that these men will ever change. And so keep that in mind, is that your healing doesn't have to be based on whether or not these men ever change, whether or not, you know, this sector of Black men ever see Black women and our humanity and our beauty. Like, they might put white women on a pedestal until the end of time, but that doesn't mean you have to be stuck in your own pain or triggers and that kind of thing. And so I think doing that work for yourself is first and foremost, right? And it's okay to focus on loving yourself as a Black woman. I think that's okay, right? And it doesn't mean that you're going to hate all Black men, or that, you know, you'll disrespect all Black men, or always, you know, I think try to seek revenge on them. But to prioritize yourself first is very much necessary in a racist and misogynistic world. So being at the intersection of being both Black and woman in a society like the one we live in is actually probably necessary, you know, for many of us.
Awesome. I don't want to be, sorry, I can only be Chantel. I love that. That's true, baby girl. Be yourself. I don't want to be picked by a man who doesn't appreciate and love my Black skin and who subscribes, sorry, colorist. Absolutely, sis. I mean, I totally agree. And I think, you know, as a woman who is married to a Black man, who happens to be maybe like a shade lighter than me. Listen, the thing is, Sarah, I was born very fair. I've got darker because from the age of 15, there's not been a year that's gone past where I've not traveled. And then that increased from like 2 countries a year to like 5, 6 countries a year. This is me, I'm tanned. I'm always tanned. But if you look at my daughter, who now, because she's got my original skin tone, which is quite fair in terms of for what a typical African would look like. But in our Igbo culture, you have the very fairest, no shade, to the very deep, darkest ebony shade. So you can't even, back home, colorism does exist, but it's kind of like, if someone's light skinned, it's like they're lighter skinned. You're not going to be getting any privilege in this family. You're just that person. Some families do that, but I've never seen that happen in my family. My sisters are lighter than me. My brothers are darker than me. As each child came, they were slightly more lighter and lighter in shade, right? To the point now, when I'm out with my daughter, people assume that her dad is white. It's like, are you stupid? But that's because of the miseducation.
Yes, exactly.
You have light-skinned black people that are not mixed with white. It's not about race. Race is a construct from the white man.
Right.
Melanin comes in different facets.
Yeah.
There is no standard of whiteness because the white man comes from a black woman. I just broke down the code for you. If every black woman is the creator of all life, then we are the standard of beauty. Our hair type and it's all of its variations is the standard. But we don't even want to be in that position where we're like, well, you know, give us the crown and we're going to now enslave or degrade others. We just want to be left alone to be our beautiful, divine selves and to be celebrated by whoever wants to celebrate us and to be left the F alone by people who have not got good intentions for us.
You know?
Make
exactly.
people with good intentions by people with good intentions. I mean, no. Like black people, we don't know no one, you know. We just want to enjoy our lives, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's a lot. It's a lot. Listen, I'm aware that we're what? Oh my God, 3 minutes before Instagram's going to cut us off. Does anybody have anything else that they want to say? I have enjoyed this conversation.
I know.
So much. An hour just doesn't even feel serious.
Yeah, I'm on an Instagram live with like a famous actress and director.
Well, listen, I'm your homie now. It's on, man. We've got so much stuff to talk about and to do.
I know.
It's a lot of work, man. But no, I really want
I would say to anyone who hasn't seen No Shade yet, definitely see it. And I think, again, like even the questions of like how light-skinned women respond to colorism, like the movie addresses so many nuances of colorism. It talks about the gender dynamics. It talks about, you know, the perspective, even a light-skinned black man, right? And so I think it's well-rounded in a way that other depictions of colorism aren't always. So definitely see the film as well to further your exploration of the issue.
Absolutely. And with what Dr. Sarah was doing at the moment, there's a whole series of books coming out by people of color and surrounding the colorism issue. So make sure you follow Colorism Healing as a handle so that you can see the different books that are coming out. It's about knowledge and education. You know, the more that you come into contact with people that are sharing knowledge, mute out, you know, the consistent kind of black trauma porn that I call it, of just seeing us being murdered and degraded. Of course, we want to keep up to date with news and popular culture, but we really need to feed ourselves and nourish ourselves so that we can be of service to ourselves and each other. That's where true healing will come from. I really believe that.
Absolutely.
Wow, we've got 2 minutes remaining. I've just seen the countdown. So that's also to give you that. I've not really done an Instagram live, so this is my first one. Yay!
What? Well, you did excellent.
I know.
There are a lot of comments.
Are there comments?
Simone was just reiterating that.
Whoa.
No Shade is on Amazon Prime and Afroland TV.
Yeah.
Great talk. Thank you for your wisdom. Please save this live. Do you know how to save the live?
I'm gonna save it. Don't worry. Absolutely.
Okay. Good.
For some of us,
we are beautiful. I can only be. Chantel says we are beautiful. Yes, we are.
Walker Live says, for some of us, the incentive to address our privilege and racism started with my family. I wanted to see my nieces and nephews grow up. I wanted to see my sisters thrive. Thank you, Walker Live, who's from Seattle. I actually started this video an hour early, Sarah. I got the times wrong. So I came on at 5 o'clock, actually 6 o'clock here. Yeah. Oh. So I was an hour early. So I spoke to a few people, but thank you for saying that. And that's true. Sometimes it's not affecting you, but it doesn't mean that you need to be blind to the situation. You can still help, you know. What else is being said here? I'm saying light-skinned women are better. In my teens, I felt always as a 1-year-old woman, my black is beautiful. Good. I'm loving that. I think upbringing also factors heavily. I totally agree, Amira. Sorry, I'm just shooting through all these now. Eve Jean, we created everyone. That's right, baby. Put that in your journal. We are beautiful. We absolutely are. Great talk. Thank you for the wisdom. I'm going to defo watch it this evening and send it to your little sisters. NoShadeFilm.com. Go to my website right now. It's in the bio. Watch it on your favorite platform. Probably choose the black ones. Wow. Peace and love. Bye.